Welcome to the Q1 Buck Poll. I'm Tim Hart with Mike Big Buck Hoffner. Finally, the weather has changed.
Changed? It's gone from summer to winter.
Very quickly. Well, that means hopefully the deer are going to be moving in your area. And again, when you have success, register your buck or doe right here on the Q1 Buck Poll. Well, this week, Mike, we've got a couple of different things we're talking to the DNR about. We're talking to them about license fees. You know, some people are going to agree with this. Some are going to be like, hey, wait a second. I don't want my fee to go up. But, you know, they're going to be talking about why they are looking for increased fees.
I'll tell you what, we're talking about change. And any time that you implement change, you're going to have pros and cons, happy people, unhappy people. Well, we're here to learn the facts.
Dr. Bill Moritz will be with us on that segment with the DNR. We also are going to talk to CO Rich Nichols, and he's going to talk about scouting on public land, because there's certain ways you need to do it. A lot of people, you know, they take to the woods right away, and they've got their spot, and he's going to talk about some of the details.
Yeah, and what can you do once you're out on that public land? I think that's a part of the segment that we'll learn a little bit more about.
Not everybody has their own farmland to go hunt, so we'll talk about that with CO Rich Nichols. We also are going to have our sponsor spotlight on today, and then we've got Tony LaPratt. He's going to be talking about playing the wind, and as we talk about that, do you know what stand you're going out on every time you go out to hunt without checking the wind?
I'll tell you what, they've made it easy. You got cell phones, you can tell which the wind direction is blowing, but I'll tell you, the animal, the deer's sense of smell is probably his biggest ally, so that's something you've really got to pay close attention to.
And Big Buck Hoffner has
bucks.
Bucks! He's got all kinds of bucks to show you. And you can also catch the bucks on Q1BuckPoll.com on our website. Stay with us. We got it all right here on the Q1 Buck Poll. Firekeepers Casino and Hotel present the Q1 Buck Poll. Welcome back to the Q1 Buck Poll. Well, before we talk to Dr. Bill Moritz about the license fees, Big Buck Hoffner's got bucks to take a look at. And what we're trying to do is feature people from around the state. So as we have in these early shows, you know, we've got big bucks, small bucks, but we're just trying to show the hunters out there.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily the biggest buck, although the QDMA people would want to promote that. But for some hunters or first-time hunters, hey, I can remember back my first deer, hey, it was golden. It was an 8-pointer, but I'll tell you what, you'll jump up and down when it's your first buck. So speaking of bucks, let's start out with Holly Moore with a 4-pointer from Southwest Michigan, and the score was 24.5. Then we had Brian Van Hurst from Southwest Michigan, from Calhoun, with a 6-pointer. The score was 27.875.
All right, that's just a couple of bucks. You can go see all the bucks online at Q1BuckPoll.com. Register your buck or doe to get in the contest, and it doesn't make a difference what size deer you have. You have a chance to win that Yamaha Grizzly 350 ATV from Custom Connection Motorsports. And with that, we're going to talk a little bit about money right now. Dr. Bill Moritz is with us from the DNR, and he's talking about increased license fees.
Well, increased license fee, but I think it's a whole new ball game and difference in terms of what the hunting license looks like. So you're going to have to pay attention to the details because they are changing for next year.
Welcome back to the Q1 Buck Poll. I now have Dr. Bill Moritz. He's the DNR Resource Deputy Director. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here today.
Well, today we're going to talk about some major changes in the fishing and hunting licenses for 2014. Tell me what some of those changes are.
Well, we've proposed to the legislature and to create a new license package that is simple, fair, and efficient for the sportsman. Today there's 227 different license types available for the various people who participate in outdoor recreation. As in fishing, as you know, we have the base fishing license, we have a all species fishing license. In hunting, there's a different license if you're a senior, if you're a regular hunter, if you're a youth. We have all these different license types, and they become fairly complex. What we're proposing to do is to streamline those down to about 40 different license types. That covers the full spectrum of hunting and fishing, and it makes it simple, fair, and efficient for people to figure out.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, I know that there's proposed a $1 surcharge for education. Well, where is that money going to be used?
We had some legislative interest in a model that Colorado has used to inform the broad general public about the value of hunting and fishing in general society. Colorado had a lot of ballot initiatives about hunting and fishing, and they realized the general public out there doesn't know about how important hunting and fishing is to rural economies. And so they started an information campaign, and they paid for it by a surcharge on hunting and fishing licenses. We're proposing to use that same model here in Michigan to help with that education process for the great resources we have in this state.
So really, the revenue is going to be used for a variety of things. For hunters that say, "Hey, well, show me the money. How's it going to be used? Are we going to have habitat outcomes? What's going to be happening there?"
So there is a slight increase in the cost of licenses. For example, a deer license would go from $15 to $20. We have a base license that all hunters would need to purchase. That money that license structure would generate about an additional $19 million for the state. Those dollars would be used for boots on the ground, waders in the water, eyes in the field, which is more habitat projects, better habitat, better wildlife management, more conservation officers, better fisheries management. So there's no administrative costs, there's no overhead types of things. This is work on the ground where this money will be used. We work with the stakeholders to come up with where those dollars should go. We're also going to have a grant program to the nonprofits and to other groups to do work with us on the ground.
And when you talk about the stakeholders, you really mean the people that hunt and fish,
the
and
participants.
people that participate in the outdoors.
And this is game and fish money, so it'll be exclusively for game and fish management.
So not going to the general fund.
That's correct.
Well,
it's important.
People are always suspect. Well, you want more money, now what are you going to do with it? You said you're going to use it for this, but now you're using it over here, and that's not the case here.
These are game and fish dollars being used for game and fish management. I do need to point out that the governor did recommend more general fund for conservation officers. That has been approved at this point. We're looking at $2.9 million ongoing for more conservation officers using the general taxpayer dollars because they are part of that rural enforcement network. When there's a problem at night in rural counties, most of the time it's a conservation officer that's the first responder. So the governor recognized that and is providing money for better coverage by conservation officers.
Now, this is not taking place in 2013. This is a 2014 initiative, correct?
So this is the FY14 budget. The general fund dollars would be available October 1st. The license fees won't change until March 1st of 2014. So it'd be the summer fishing in 14 and the fall hunting in 14.
Okay, so lots of different things happening here with conservation in the state of Michigan, and I think, the governor, but the DNR in particular, recognizing what a economic boost and what a treasure we have here with the outdoors of Michigan.
And it's critical to recognize that natural resources are the backbone of Michigan's economy, and tourism is a $2 billion industry in this state. We're number 3 in the number of hunters, number 5 in the number of fishermen. Our people enjoy getting outdoors, and our job is to provide those access to that world-class resource.
And if somebody had questions about these fees or changes, where can they get more information?
The DNR website has a full set of information about all of these things we've talked about.
All right, thanks for being with us.
Sure, great to be here.
Dr. Bill Moritz with us here today from the DNR. I'm Tim Hart, and you are watching the Q1 Bubble. Well, have you ever hunted public land? A lot of people, that's the only place that they can hunt. Well, today we've got the DNR's CO, Rich Nichols, with us, and he's going to talk about some of the do's and don'ts and how you can scout on public land. But before that, we got some nice-looking bucks here.
All right, let's start out with Dennis Coy with a 9-pointer. He's from southwest mid-Michigan, and his score was 40 1/4. Then Joe King from southeast Michigan with a 10-pointer. The score 46.875.
Well, let's talk about hunting on public land. Mike, there's do's and don'ts, but one of the things that I would like to stress to people, if it's not your tree stand, maybe don't hunt out of it. Because you can, but I think not.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, if you're a hunter and you respect other hunters, there's a little etiquette that you have to practice when you're out in the woods. And the same thing hunting on private land as public land is when you're out there and you see somebody's hunting a certain territory, the best thing I've always done is I'm hunting here, I expect another hunter to kind of keep its distance from me and vice versa.
I'm now talking with Conservation Officer Rich Nichols from Clinton County. Rich, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, well, let's talk about some of the problems and some of the rules and regulations that people have with tree stands on public land. What are some of the most common things that you see?
Well, the big thing about tree stands, the law requires tree stands on public land. You have to have your name and address affixed to the tree stand, clearly visible from the ground, written in clear English. Also, screw-in steps or anything that penetrates the bark of a tree is not legal on public lands. And tree stands can't be put out before September 1st, and they have to be removed by March 1st of every year. Mm-hmm. Some of the things I see a lot with tree stands, of course, the no name and address, and then leaving them up all year long. Generally, if somebody doesn't have their name and address on it, those are the ones that tend to be left out there year-round.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that something that you, as a conservation officer or the DNR, would go up and take those stands down? Or what do you do with those?
We could. Each officer handles it differently. What I normally do is, in the summer, when I have free time, I'll go out in the woods and mark the stands, usually with GPS, time and date, so I know that I visit them, and then pay them a visit during the hunting season. If they're up consecutive years, then that's when we will confiscate the stands and leave a notice on that tree.
Okay. All right, so baiting is legal too, but on public land, obviously there's some rules that you have to follow. Maybe, I don't want to say unlike private land, but a little different, isn't it?
It's mostly the same. Baiting is legal aside from the core TB area up in the northern lower peninsula. Things to remember with baiting can't start any earlier than October 1st, so the start of the hunting season, and it must end by January 1st. You're restricted to 2 gallons of bait spread out in a minimum 10 by 10 area. As long as it's spread out in a large area on the ground, that's legal. Any mineral blocks are legal in Michigan. They're still part of the 2 gallons. We recommend that any blocks are crushed up and spread on the ground as well as the normal bait.
Mm-hmm. Do you find a lot of problems with people either overbaiting or not doing it the right way?
A lot of times what I see is bait just dumped right in a pile on the ground, not spread out, and of course exceed the 2 gallon limit. A lot of people aren't real clear on what 2 gallons is. You can think of it as filling a 5 gallon bucket up and taking a little less than half of that. So it's not a lot of bait, the 2 gallon limit.
Well, and if you look at some of the state land, we were we're here today at Maple River. And if you go to some of the land that people can hunt on, there's all kinds of apple trees, there's all kinds of bait already set up for you.
Right. In southern Michigan, there's a lot of natural feed for the deer, cornfields. Here in the game area we're here today, they actually plant cover and food for the deer, but it's a reminder that food plots are not legal on state land.
Okay. And as we talk about hunting on state land, if you've had success, you make your shot, deer takes off, or whatever the case is, you need to track the deer. Can you track a deer with dogs on public land?
You can track deer with dogs. It's legal private and public land. The one exception on the public land is you can't use a dog that barks on public land. There is a group of certified blood trackers, they're called. You can find blood trackers in your area online. They have to be certified. They use a dog on a leash, and somebody can accompany the tracker, the licensed hunter, with a weapon, but it can only be loaded at the point of kill.
Okay. All right. So you can hunt with or you can track with dogs. You need to make sure you follow the rules and regs with the bait and along with the tree stands, and you should have a great hunting season.
Correct.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. Conservation Officer Rich Nichols here with Clinton County area. I'm Tim Hart. You're watching the Q1 Buckle. We like to thank all of our sponsors here on the Q1 Buck Bowl. Each week we've got a sponsor spotlight, and today Gold Star 2 from Lake Odessa. They've got just a great little place there, and the guys are wonderful. And I like going into a pro shop like that. You can go one-on-one with a lot of times the guy running the store.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, bigger is not necessarily better. I like the serviceability when you buy hunting equipment because sometimes when it needs to be fine-tuned, those guys are great at doing it.
All right, well, thanks to Gold Star 2 Outdoors for being a part of the Q1 Buck Poll this year. And with that, Mike, we've got more bucks to show.
All right, let's start out with Andy Borders from Southeast Michigan with a 9-pointer. The score was 47.125. Then we have Devin Newsom from Southwest Michigan with an 8-pointer. The score 38.25. And finally, Caleb Sattler from South Mid Michigan. Listen to this, 13-pointer. The score, Tim, 52 5/8. That's some serious deer.
That is a serious deer. We want to make sure that you get your deer in too. And the way you can do that is playing the wind. Today we've got Tony LaPratt with us, along with Chris Pearson. They're going to talk about how do you play the wind, and how do you set your stand, and where do you go hunt. Don't have a preconceived idea, I'm going here today, unless you know what the wind's doing.
Yeah, I think good hunters, they spread it around because wind direction is so vitally important because I'll tell you the deer's sense of smell, I think it's his greatest asset.
Here's Tony and Chris.
Today we're going to talk about wind, and wind is the most important thing. If you are not paying attention to your wind, you're already behind the 8 ball. Now guys, what I want to talk about is how wind does so many different things. First of all, wind reacts differently due to the trees, the size of your woods, the height. So let's explain something. If you have a woods that is tall and deep, wind is going to work like water. It's going to get on top of them trees and it's going to fly across there. And here we have a southwest corner. That wind's going to fly across there. When it hits that opening, it's going to do a dive, just like water. And then it's going to do a back toe. It's going to actually spin the wind into the woods. So you're sitting in your tree stand like this. The wind is blowing against your back and blowing that way, but what it does, it dives, hits the ground, and literally blows behind you. And a deer 20 yards behind you is snorting at you because the wind is doing this. Now, if the woods is short and not very wide and not real tall, it's going to work more like a wave. The wind is going to come and hit this and go over and dive out about 20 to 30 yards in front of you. That's what most people think the wind does. But you got to remember there's a lot of factors. Whether there's leaves on the trees, reacts differently. You can have a river that is running north and south, have a southwest wind blowing like this. When there's leaves on the trees, the wind hits them trees and takes the path of least resistance. So a southwest wind right at my tree stand turns north. When the leaves are off the tree, the wind still stays at southwest. Chris, why don't you explain how we figured this out?
Here at Ultimate Land Management, what you want to do is basically go out in March, April, February, when basically the leaves are going to be off, your same hunting conditions, and also, Tony, the same wind conditions and temperature that you got. Temperature also controls wind, basically what it's going to do and everything. So basically what we've done in all of our stands is we've gone in March when basically it's the same temperature as like when we're hunting. And basically we'll light a smoke bomb and actually watch the wind, what it does and everything. This way you know the exact follow. Now basically if you're hunting a deer and basically you say, okay, I've got everything set up for a 20-yard shot, and basically the smoke bomb goes out there at 40, 50 yards, basically, okay, we gotta understand that basically we don't need that. And so the smoke basically is gonna determine basically exactly how the wind travels and everything, and helps you basically for your hunting skills and everything, Tony.
So we check all our stands, and that gives us a lot of advantage because now we know where we need to be. And then like what we're talking about here, if you know the deer are always moving, the deer runs all come in close to your stand and your scent is hitting out 30 or 40, even though the wind's blowing in that direction, we can still hunt it because all the deer, 90% of them are always right up close to the stand. Now, this lets us make sure that when we're hunting that stand, we're hunting the right wind. And every property is different and every stand is different. That's why you really need to do some type of wind test on your property if you really want to be that master deer hunter.
Great information as always with Tony and Chris from Ultimate Land Management and the Whitetail Boot Camp. You know, Mike, we talked about license fees. We talked about scouting on public land. We're trying to bring people a lot of information. You can go online if you miss something and watch any of the TV shows at q1buckpole.com.
I'll tell you what, this is all an educational segment, as well as throwing a few fun features on the deer that we bring in, but it's all about educating you so you can go out there in the woods and enjoy it while you're out there.
Again, go to q1buckpole.com. You can see all of the deer. You also can like us on Facebook. We're posting pictures there. So we're having a lot of fun this year, and we want you to be a part of it. Our final prize party will be at Firekeepers Casino in Battle Creek, and we'll let you know that date here coming up. For Mike Big Buck Hofter, I'm Tim Hart. Whenever you're out in the woods, be safe. Thanks for watching this week's edition of the Q1 Buck Pole.
He's crowding you for headspace. Headspace.
I am a humble servant of the Q1 Buck Pole.
I can tell.
And right now I'm taking a lot of stuff that is just unwarranted.
Wow.
You're hurting my feelings.